Like many a town or village along the coast of Italy, this small fishing town and vacation spot has an ancient heritage. Its roots reach back into the worldly glory of the Roman Empire. It was then, as it is now, a minor port facing out onto the Tyrrhenian Sea. In ancient times, its name was Antium, and it was not without a degree of dubious distinction. Nero was born here, and Caligula. There is little today to recall the days of the Roman legions, and very few of the thousands of Americans who knew it during World War II would recognize its ancient name or its rebuilt, unscarred face. Time and peace have had nearly 2 decades to do their healing work. There has been peace, and much that is past has been mercifully lost to memory. But a great many Americans will never forget this town's modern-day name, the name they knew it by in 1944, Anzio.
In 1943, it was one of our strategic aims to draw as many German forces as possible away from the Russian front and French coastal areas and to contain them on the Italian peninsula while liberating as much of Italy as might be possible with the means at our disposal.
As General Clark was well aware, our objectives were one thing, the achieving of them another. In late 1943, our lack of progress in the south of Italy was leading to the necessity of a landing in the enemy's rear at Anzio. Our problems in Italy had been many. For example, there was the terrain. It was ideal for the defending enemy forces, cruelly difficult for Allied troops.
Oh boy, you talk about your bad country. I mean, they didn't have but 2 directions over there. Up the hill and down the hill.
Here, methods of transport long obsolete became operational necessities. It was this kind of hostile, perpendicular country which led one Allied officer to comment, "What you need to fight a war over this ground is an army of bulletproof kangaroos." The kangaroos, to be effective, would have had to be amphibious as well as bulletproof, for uncrossable rivers and blown bridges were prime facts of life.
The enemy really knew his job. When those people blew a bridge, we had to start over from scratch. Some of our guys stayed wet so long their skin puckered up like a prune. We didn't get a lot of help from the weather either, as I remember.
By midwinter, the Allies' advance toward Rome had bogged down. Just south of Cassino, a stalemate had developed, and it was the deadlock here at the Gustav line which germinated the seeds of the Anzio operation. Naples, mid-January 1944. The build-up for a landing at Anzio was underway. This would be an amphibious end run, which would put a force on the beach to the enemy's rear and much too close to Rome for his comfort. Maybe we could break the casino deadlock this way, but from the start, there were serious problems.
It had the looks of a very chancy operation. For one thing, when all the begging, borrowing, and scrounging were done, there were only 38 LSTs for the sea lift. What that meant was the initial landing force was going to have to be dangerously small. 2 divisions. 2 more to come on the second trip. 6th Corps, that was us, under General John P. Lucas, drew the honor. It was a gamble for everybody concerned, but it had to be taken.
By 21 January 1944, the task force was moving toward Anzio. The 2 divisions were well chosen. The British 1st Infantry had been through Dunkirk. The American 3rd had fought through Tunisia and Sicily. But at this point, all was doubt, speculation. What lay ahead, no man, at whatever level, could know for certain.
By the time it got light on the 22nd, we were already putting people on the beach. I made the Salerno landing before, and I was all set in my mind for this to be just as bad. I kept waiting for them to open up with the heavy stuff, but it didn't happen. I didn't get it, but I sure wasn't complaining.
Unbelievably, the landing was almost completely unopposed. The enemy's reserve divisions near Rome had been drawn south by an Allied attack on the casino front designed to do just that. By an ironic bit of timing, the Germans had called off their 24-hour coast watch on the very night when the task force was approaching Anzio. Equally ironic was this: we had achieved complete surprise, and we didn't know it.
The only real trouble we got that day was from the air. They did some damage, but they only had something like 350 planes in the whole area. We had about 2,000, so they couldn't do too much. Still, at the time, it seemed like enough.
Despite harassment from the air, losses were light. The first day saw 90% of the landing forces ashore. Immediately, they began consolidating the beachhead against the enemy counterattack, expected at any moment. With his reserve divisions pulled south by the casino attack, the enemy had only ragtag fragments of units at his disposal, but he moved them up swiftly. Prisoners taken in the first days were universally smiling and confident once they discovered they were not going to be mistreated. They were certain that in a matter of days they would see the Allied landing force pushed into the sea. The 6th Corps had already faced the swift and professional reaction of the German commander Kesselring at Salerno and expected no less of him in this new meeting. He lost no time in eliminating the advantage of surprise which the Allies had unknowingly gained. At Kesselring's command, General von Mackensen assumed responsibility for Anzio, and by evening of the second day of the landing, parts of 8 divisions were in position and more were moving up. Beginning at dawn, 4 days after the first landing, the Allied force set out to push farther inland, enlarging the beachhead. The golden moment of surprise was gone. They came against rigid opposition. It was a foretaste of things to come. In 3 days of fighting, the perimeter was extended somewhat, but the cost was high. A force of 767 American Rangers trying to infiltrate and capture nearby Cisterna was ambushed. Most were taken prisoner. By now, the other two divisions of the 6th Corps had arrived, but so had the enemy.
It was one of my duties as a medical officer to keep a listing of casualties for Corps headquarters. By the end of January, we had taken a total of 3,000 casualties. As a statistic, that's a straightforward figure. The mind may accept it without distress. The thing that must be remembered is this. The statistic refers to 30 times 100 human beings hurt or killed.
The Allied offensive ground to a stop, and the Anzio forces went on the defensive. Bad weather came. This meant no air cover. This meant enemy forces building up without hindrance. A counterattack was inevitable, and we got ready for it. But barbed wire and mines, so helpful to a force on the defensive, were in somewhat short supply.